Favorite comfort horror movies. Hello and welcome to this week's video. Now, a few weeks back I did a favorite comfort Doctor Who stories video. So this week I thought I'd do a favorite comfort horror movies. Now, let's take a look back at where I kind of started with horror, which was obviously in the 80s. And a lot of those 80s horror movies are my comfort food when it comes to horror, though it's certainly not exclusively limited to the 80s. Now, a comforting horror movie isn't necessarily my favorite movies aren't necessarily exclusively limited to a comfort movie. I mean, my favorite horror movie of all time is probably the original 1974 Black Christmas. I would not describe that as a comfort movie. It's actually very, very chilling. I wouldn't even describe the original Halloween as a comfort movie. And yet I would probably describe most of the Halloween sequels as comfort horror movies. The original sequels, anyway, up to and including H2O. 2, 3, 4, 5. I've never liked 6. I think that's fucking terrible. But Halloween 2, 3, 4, 5, and H2O, I would regard all of them as comfort horror movies. Just fun horror movies that you can just enjoy and get sucked into the atmosphere without being kind of too disturbing. Talking of H2O, that was obviously the late 90s rather than 80s one, and I would describe a lot of that era's horror movies as being kind of comfort food horror movies. The post-Scream kind of teen slasher craze that lasted till about the early 2000s. Now, I know there are a lot of horror fans who don't like that era. Well, boo shocks to you, because I do. I thoroughly enjoyed it at the time. Probably because although I wasn't a teenager, I was still young enough to actually relate to the teenagers of that generation. And let's face it, most of them were actually being played by actors that were not teenagers anyway, and were probably closer to my age, in my early 20s, early mid 20s. Whereas today's generation are like a bunch of alien beings that I don't like and would really rather see leave the planet, please. But so yeah, I love that period. Some of my favorite comfort ones from that include I Still Know What You Did Last Summer. More so that sequel than the original, because I find the original a bit of a mixed. I find the original a bit of an odd one, because not a lot of people know it's based on a book. It's based on like a teen book by a teen thriller book by a writer called Lois Duncan, and it was not a slasher book. It was a serious kind of drama thriller book. It's basically about, responsibility and guilt. The setup's the same. It's these teenagers who drunk drive, kill a guy and try to hide the body, and then they start getting notes a year later. I know what you did last summer. But it's really about, it's really about the fact that this thing shatters their lives. They're trying to hide it, to get away with it. Totally shatters their lives, as you see in the first half of the movie. But then, of course, the second half of the movie just turns into like a Scream slasher movie, which, to me, because I did actually read that book as a teenager. I don't know. To me, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. It's like two different movies, whereas the sequel is just a dumb, silly slasher movie the whole way round. I just find that more works more for me, whereas the original just feels like a real tonal shift. That's just my opinion. But other ones, Urban Legend is another one that I love. Final Destination, mainly the original. I didn't like the sequels. I recently rediscovered Cherry Falls, which is a 2000 slasher movie, very much in the mold. It's basically about a small town where a serial killer starts targeting teenagers who are virgins. So they decide to organize an orgy, as you do. I didn't think much to that movie at the time. At the time, I was like, yeah, whatever. It's just another Scream clone. It's got a kind of a cult following over the years, and I picked it up recently on DVD, having not seen it for 20 years since I rented it or whatever. And while I can kind of see why I wasn't that impressed with it, because it is fairly bog standard, especially for that era, I found it quite charming and entertaining nonetheless. Probably because it's very much in that mold and it's got that kind of comfort to it. And let's face it, an average movie made 20 years ago is probably 10 times better than 99% of what we get nowadays anyway. And of course, Scream. I think pretty much all of the Scream movies, not just limited to the 90s and the early 2000s, I think all the Scream movies are very much comfort horror movies for me. 1, 2, 3, 4, even though that was like 2011. Not 5, because I really think that's a genuinely awful movie. I think even Scream 6, oddly enough, I think I would probably still... yeah, I mean, it's a bit early in the day, because it's only came out last year, but yeah, it's got kind of it hasn't got the things that irritated the shit out of me, and it's a lot more fun and a lot less boring than 5. So yeah, I think that probably would be too, to be honest. Pretty much all that franchise apart from 5, and and a lot of the movies from that era, they're very much comfort food for me. Returning kind of to 80s horror, other comfort horror movies, I guess, would be stuff like The Stepfather, Link, which of course I saw when I was still a kid. My brother got them on DVD, VHS. He actually won those too, so we watched them endlessly in the late 80s and 90s. Warlock from 1989 with sadly the now late Julian Sands. That's an awesome comedy horror fantasy. Definitely a comfort flick for me. Now, it has to be, like with kind of Doctor Who, I mean, I guess nostalgia plays a large part in it. Not always, but nostalgia does play a certain part in having like a comfort food piece of media. There are exceptions. It's probably still a little too early, even though I have seen it more times in 5 years than I watch most things in 5 years. But I think it's verging on becoming a comfort food favourite, is Ready or Not, which is my opinion is still the best thing Radio Silence have ever done. I love Ready or Not. That movie is like one of the best times I've had at the cinema in like the last decade. Which, and I mean, I can barely remember movies where I actually laugh out loud in the cinema. Ready or Not is one of the where I actually laughed out loud. The bloody the coke snorting sister who keeps accidentally shooting the maids. I don't know. She goes, why does this always keep happening to me? I actually cracked out fucking laughing in the cinema at that. Nobody else did. I actually burst out laughing at that. I love Ready or Not. That's probably the best comedy horror since, I was going to say the 80s, but probably Shaun of the Dead, certainly. And that's probably a comfort one right there, Shaun of the Dead, from the early 2000s. So there are some kind of comfort ones that have crept in a little more recently, even though the majority, I would say, are from the 80s or maybe the late 90s, early 2000s. Anyway, these are just some of my favourite comfort horror movies. Let me know some of yours below. Bye for now.